Fleming in the Philippines here. I might squeeze another one in, maybe two this afternoon before the light goes. It's only just after 4, but still. Anyway, don't wait, self-medicate. At the moment in the UK, I don't think it's quite so bad in America, but in the UK we have a real problem because TERFs, gender crits and other lowlifes have been actively campaigning against young people getting the hormonal treatment they need to transition. And again, I've said this before, I thought we'd got past this point, but apparently not. At the moment, it can take as much as 3 years for a young person to get a first appointment at a gender clinic. 3 years. So if a boy approaches at the age of 13, then he's going to be 16. He will already have gone through male puberty before he gets his first prescription. And everybody knows, and it's a basic fact of life, is that by 16 it's too late to give puberty blockers. It's too late, it's past tense. I mean, that is the purpose behind this. You have to understand that the TERFs and their allies, they don't want people to transition. They just want to stamp it out completely. And one way they believe they can do this is by forcing people to wait till it's too late for them to transition. You know, it's deeply cynical. These are very, very unpleasant people. That being the case, young people, and I'm talking about very young people, under 13, who have homosexual gender dysphoria, who are pre-transsexuals, who are trans kids, they really have to make a decision about how to do things if they live in a country like the UK. It's different here. I mean, if that happens here, you go down the corner shop, you buy yourself some hormones. I mean, I'm seriously telling the truth. I can go down to my local convenience store and they have them there on the counter and you just buy them. It's just not a problem. You don't need to go to the doctor. You don't need prescriptions. You just give them the 100 pesos, whatever it is, and that's it, you've got them. But in the UK, everything has to be medicalised. Everything has to go through these gatekeepers. And my view is that the system now is, in the first place, the NHS has been failing for decades. It's been collapsing for lack of investment. And successive governments have done nothing to help. I mean, anybody suggesting that 3 years is a reasonable time span to wait for an appointment with a specialist needs to have their head looked. It clearly isn't. That's totally unacceptable. The NHS, which is the National Health Service, health provision in the UK, by the way, is government funded, centrally funded, and is a disaster. It's a complete and utter disaster. I've lived in enough countries in the rest of the world to know that the NHS is not the jewel in the crown that British people think it is. It's not. It's a very poor relative of the systems that are found in other European countries. I can assure you of that because I've seen both at work firsthand. I've always had good health, but both my ex-wife and my mother, they weren't so lucky, and I saw what the systems did to them. There's no question that the NHS is a failure. Having said that, any situation in which you have to wait 3 years for a first appointment, that's a basic first appointment, is completely unacceptable. And therefore people have a choice. They either have to go private, which is expensive. And and there are not actually that many providers or clinics in the UK which are private and are able to provide in these cases, able to prescribe in these cases, unfortunately. But then they're very expensive. For ordinary people who don't have limitless funds, the only thing they can really do is self-medicate. Now, I've put a page up on a site called allabouthsts.com, which is all about HSTS, called the Trans Toolkit, and I think you should go there. I've added a couple of potential suppliers already. I will be adding more because there are people here in the Philippines who will send to the UK. Before I go any further, I should say that it is completely legal. There is no impediment to people importing feminizing hormones for their own use. You can't sell them, but you can import them for your own use. That's completely legal. For people, for FTM, very different situation because the principal drug is testosterone. That's a listed drug. You can't import that. But if you're MTF, if you're a young feminine boy who is pre-transsexual, who wants to be a woman, who is a woman, really, it's a girl, and just wants to fulfill herself, then yes, you can. You can import these things at very reasonable cost. They're not expensive. I mean, the drugs that you're using are not expensive drugs. You can just buy them online and have them imported and take them. I would recommend that before you start this, that you have blood tests done, right? Just to see if there's anything odd going on with you. A lot of doctors are quite sympathetic to this sort of thing. Others, however, are not. They will say that because they actually end up paying for your blood test in the UK, that they're not prepared to spend money on this because, you know, you're not going to come to them because they can't prescribe these drugs to you. It has to go through a specialist, which you'll wait 3 years for. So some doctors will be difficult. They won't agree. They won't go along with it. But it would be a good idea to have your blood tested. And on that page I mentioned, there's a list of the tests you should have done. And you should have this done repeatedly. You should have this done regularly so that you can monitor the levels in your blood. If you're on these hormones, do I have to actually say this? You really must not smoke. Do not smoke, especially if you're taking estradiol. Estradiol is an iffy one because it's a synthetic estrogen. It's very strong, but because it's strong, it tends to be, there is some statistical evidence that it's more likely to cause clotting than estrogen. This is a very low risk. I mean, it's a tiny risk, but it's there, and it will be increased by smoking, because smoking itself increases the risk of blood clots. So you don't really, that's what to do, is to get your blood tested if you can. Get these things online. They'll be delivered discreetly in a plain brown wrapper. If your parents are supportive, then that's really good. But we have to recognise that some parents are not supportive, and in that case, you're just going to have to get them to send to somebody else because you can't take the risk. But the biggest risk for a pre-transsexual boy being forced to go through puberty as a boy. You know, I know an awful lot of trans women here, and all of the successful ones, the ones who really do, they're beautiful. There you go. Boy, what a lovely girl. They all started taking hormones, usually contraceptive pills, at the age of 12, 11, 12, 13, in about there, and most are around about 12. There's no chance in the UK of you getting that, but there are very powerful TERF organisations. It's basically, the problem here is feminists, it's always feminists, trying to shut these things down. And they don't care that there are several different kinds of gender dysphoria, and they don't care that girls are totally different from boys. In fact, they don't believe that girls are different from boys. So they don't care that they're going to do really serious harm to boys. And of course, one of the other agents, bad actors in this grouping, is the new gay man, the gay men who have been conned into believing that they're actually men, and who are determined to stop any transition. No boys are going to be allowed to transition by the NGM, because that's another person lost to their, basically to their meat market and to their campaigning organisation. That's a person who's going to say, I don't want to change society. I'm just going to be a woman, get married, settle down, adopt a few kids, and have a nice life. Thank you. Now fuck off. The NGM don't want that. He doesn't want that. He wants them out in the street, looking ridiculous, big hairy chest and pink panties on, protesting. That's what he wants. So you don't want anybody transitioning. And of course, you still have the traditional conservative church-going right who just don't see it. None of these people have any right to interfere in the lives of other individuals. They should really be minding their own damn business, but they can't do it, can they? So you're going to have to get around them. And the only way you can do that is by self-medicating, because you really do, if you're in that position, by the age of 13, you need to arrest puberty. You need to stop it. The way that it's done, the way that this is done formally and officially, is that at age 13, puberty blockers are given to give, and I quote, some breathing space. And then usually at 16, estrogen will be given to start feminizing. I think that's a misguided policy, because sex hormones are actually implicated in proper bone development. And if you take, particularly the very strong ones like GnRH, if you take that, then there really isn't any testosterone left. And that might cause problems. It's not necessarily will cause, but it might cause problems with bone development. So it's wise to start giving estrogen really at the same time as you start puberty blocking. And certainly that's what happens here. That's what people do here, and it's very successful. It's really very successful. I mean, there are some of the trans women around here are just, I mean, it's totally successful. It's completely successful. You know, that's all I can say. It really works. And I've been posting pictures, as you possibly know if you follow these things, on my community page of trans women, many of whom do come from the Philippines or Thailand, where the situation is really very much the same. In fact, it's even easier in Thailand. Just tell me that these are not successful transitions. It's, you know, it's a ludicrous claim. So that's really what you have to do. You have to consider self-medication. I don't like the fact that that's the case, but it would, you know, it's better for that to happen than for even one young boy who's transsexual to be forced through a male puberty that he doesn't want to experience, and which, and doing so may well prevent him ever actually passing as a woman. And that's completely unacceptable. You have to remember that HSTS are not interested in being gays. They're not interested in being some part of some LGB thing. They're not interested in being separate from society. They want to integrate into society as women. And in order to do that, they must pass. Right? They have to pass flawlessly, effortlessly. Nobody must believe, oh, he looks a bit funny, he's a tranny. That's not what they want. What they want is just to be ignored. And again, here in the Philippines, I mean, you know, I've been coming here for a long time and I've lived here a long time. And there are still times, you know, I'll be walking through the mall with Sam or someone else and she'll, you know, do that, nudge me with their elbow. You know, did you notice that one? And I'll go, what one? That girl was, you really? You know, and unless you're actually one yourself, I think there's a lot of them, probably about 20%, you just can't get. It's not possible. You would never know unless the girl actually stands up and says, yeah, I'm a trans, I'm Bakla. You know? And that's what we're aiming for. That's what we want. We want people to be so successfully transitioned that nobody would know. And in order to do that, you have to start early. Even for HSTS. Now, I know HSTS are naturally more feminine and tend to have a, you know, slightly different experience of puberty than AGPs. AGPs are something else, we're not really talking about that here. That's late bloomers, the ones that discover themselves later in teenage. But for HSTS, they actually can pass absolutely successfully, 100% successfully as women if they start early enough. And so we have to support that. And if the government is going to not help, then people will have to help themselves. And the only way to do that is self-medication. Take care. Go and look at allaboutHSTS.com. I don't do that much updating of it, but I am trying to keep up with it. I have added that page and I will add more. Anybody who's got any suggestions, please let me know. Take care of yourselves. Bye.